Welcome to the Web Design Business Podcast with your host, Josh Hall, helping you build a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Hello, friends. Welcome into episode 210, where I am thrilled, I am pleased, I am honored, I'm excited. I'm all the things to bring in one of my very favorite colleagues in the web design world and a three-peat guest on this podcast, and somebody who actually really inspired me to launch my brand at joshhall.co. This is none other than Geno Quiroz. If you've been in the Divi community, he likely needs no introduction. If you're not in the Divi community, Geno was somebody who really inspired me to start sharing what I knew about web design and my processes and my methods and how I built sites, because Geno is still a tutorial creator and is somebody who has been an entrepreneur in a variety of different ways, especially even more so as we talked in this episode. I find out, my gosh, how many things did he do at one point? But we talk a lot about in this episode, really what doing a lot of things has led to, which unfortunately for Geno was, in full transparency, as you'll hear in this episode, was a lot of burnout, a lot of stress, and a lot of weight gain, and a lot of health and life balance issues that he's worked through. And he's right in the middle of progressing in such an incredible way through a lot of this stuff. So Geno has been really open about his journey on weight loss and work-life balance and managing work and life and all the things. And I think in this day and age, especially right now, of mental health and, quite frankly, just staying sane while you're working from home and running your business with all that's going on in the world, I thought it would be a really cool time to bring Geno on and just get to hear from him on like what he's learned and what he's implementing right now, which, as I found out, were some really strategic things that I think anyone can apply to your life, no matter where you are in your journey in health and wellness while you're working and while you're building your business. Because this, gosh, it is so important that you take care of your mind and your body and all of the things that make you human if you're going to run your business for the long haul. Because a lot of people, sorry, I'm like going on the soapbox before we even dive in, but I just have to say this. I see so many people go hard and they go wild at first. And then guess what happens? They burn out, or they fizzle out, or I never hear from them after about 6 months to about a year. And I don't want that for you. I want you to build your business for the long haul. So anyway, I think that's why I was extra excited to bring Geno on here to talk about this. And before we dive in, one thing that's kind of cool about this is because Geno had such an impact on me and encouraged me to share what I knew in regards to like tutorials. This episode is actually coming out on the 5-year anniversary of my first tutorial. 5 years ago, August 22nd, in 2017, I launched my first Divi tutorial, which was a slippery slope into the world of tutorials and was when I launched my brand. So I've got some stuff coming up. I'm going to share some lessons I've learned in building joshhall.co. I'm going to save that for the next episode, but it's kind of a cool little side note to Geno. I didn't really intentionally do this, but I thought, why not release Geno's interview and this conversation we had on the 5-year anniversary of my first tutorial, because there's not many people who deserve more credit than Geno for encouraging me and encouraging so many people around the world. But anyway, speaking of encouragement, here's Geno, and we're going to have a long, good, in-depth, just casual conversation about what he's learning in his journey with hustle, work-life balance, weight loss, and everything while running a business. So without further ado, here's Geno. Sit back, grab a coffee, grab whatever your drink of choice is, or some popcorn if you're feeling it, and let's have some fun. Oh, Geno, man, so good to chat with you. How the heck are things going right now, man?
Great. Josh, it's a new season, new year, 2022, and excited for what's lying ahead. It's been a great start to it's already halfway through the year. It's almost the second half. We're already into the fourth quarter. What am I saying here?
Yeah.
But good year so far. Doing good. How about you?
I'm pumped about stuff moving forward. We were just kind of chatting before we went live here. I'm really excited to kind of hit the next evolution of my business moving forward and offer some more resources and programs to help folks really take their business to the next level. And I know you're kind of pivoting as well, maybe not pivoting completely, but just maybe, is it fair to say like you're just kind of tweaking and revamping your online brands? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is. And those who've been, kind of following my journey and following Monterey Premier and the Quiroz.co kind of tutorials, which has kind of been, lagging a little bit in new, fresh material and content. But I've been making some major changes health wise. In the last episode, we talked a little bit on that, on emotional, like just health, emotional health, physical health, and changes in business and pivoting and stuff like that. And here we are, maybe 6 months later, and we're kind of seeing some of the fruit of that. And part of that has been taking a look at the last, 6, 7, 8 years of my journey in the WordPress community with Divi and Elegant Themes and that whole journey. And so I am kind of this year, and some people who've been with me are starting to see some of those changes in the shift in where Monterey Premier and Geno Quiroz and Quiroz.co are going.
I almost wore my Divi shirt. I was really close to wearing it. I probably should have.
I was trying to get my Divi lights working, but I got too much sunlight coming in the windows. I get some better blinds.
There we go. I do have purple on behind me for those watching. I can change my colors now in my office. So, but yeah, you were on episode 144. We had a great conversation about marketing, pivoting, some of our past. So that'll be worthwhile for folks going back to if they don't know you yet, Geno. But I wanted to specifically focus on like your mindset with health. You're killing it with weight loss, and I think that's all going to play a big part in your brand and how you show up online. And is it fair to say, I'm just totally curious, we can get as personal or as non-personal as you want, but like with you feeling, trimmer and healthier, is that helping you feel more comfortable to be on camera and getting out there in front of your brand?
Absolutely. In the past we talked about, and I think it's an important topic, especially for those in our kind of community, building websites, working it behind the desk in an office. And it always comes up, what happens when you're in a chair too long, or you're in the office too long, or you're isolated from people because we're working remotely. I think more people can relate to our world now.
Yeah.
Because of COVID, that was our world, right? So we've been living that for years. And so part of my journey has been breaking out of that, seeing what is going to work for where I'm at now. Where I'm at now physically and age-wise is not where I was 6 years ago when I was doing Divi camp or, WordPress work camps and doing Divi meetups and all that stuff down in LA and Orange County and stuff like that. And so it's taken some shift. My kids are growing up too, got a teenager in the family. And so there's all kinds of shifts. And so, yes, part of getting out of that routine of just working and getting physically well, physically healthy, mentally, emotionally, has allowed me to come back into the game after burning out. When most people don't come back after burnout, being able to get through that hump, come back refreshed, recharged, able to communicate better. Again, all that other stuff, that comes with the health and being overweight or anything else, back pain, whatever it is no longer front and center, and you can just kind of be yourself. And it's really opened up a lot of doors that I didn't realize had been shut because of all that stuff.
That's so cool, man. Well, I remember this is all like flashing back to me now because our conversation, our conversation in 144 was after your burnout. Like I remember you really had a pretty serious bout of almost calling all of it quits and doing something new, but you came back stronger than ever. And we talked about how you marketed and pivoted your business. What we did not talk about that was the physical and mental health aspect of all that. It looked like you were fresh in business and excited, but there was also the physical side and all these other aspects that the reality is, and I've learned this as a business owner, and I've kind of got away from some of my physical disciplines and stuff that I'm feeling more and more challenged to get back to. And I can make all the excuses I want as a dad with toddlers and our third baby's coming soon. There's tons of excuses, but the reality is I need to make sure I am as capable to lead my business and my family because no one else can do that. So I say all that to say it's cool to see that you're taking a real emphasis on health as a as a whole with your business? I mean, was there a breaking point for you? I mean, you had your like mental burnout with business, but you came back strong. You worked through that. Again, 144 is there for anyone who wants to go back through and spend a couple hours with us to talk through all that, because we had a good conversation. But when did the health side of things come, particularly your weight loss? Because it seemed like one day on socials, I saw you started to lose weight, and then I'm like, dang, Geno, you're looking good, man. Congrats. So when did that all kick off for you?
Well, so the journey has been ongoing. It's been a while now, and I would say like in early 2020 is probably when I got really sick and hospitalized, and this was just as COVID was going around. This was right before it was like really out there, and
you've always been a trendsetter. First Divi tutorials, first guy with a bad case of COVID. Like you're on the forefront, man.
And sure enough, there I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks. And it was really serious. Different parts of, different organs were failing. Doctors didn't know what was going on. We had no clue. I got out, and it was a slow, in fact, it was a very hard recovery. And as everything was happening, COVID, we were learning what was happening to me, but also there was everything else going on, being shut in. So I got really worse and worse. And then I would say it was in May of last year, I had hit my peak in weight that I had ever weighed on a hospital visit. And I was in the hospital in and out regularly. But when I first went to the hospital, I'd lost so much weight, they were scared. But that was because I was super sick with the COVID. But then when I came out, I can barely move. I was physically unable. And because we were shut in and we didn't go anywhere, then what happened is I ballooned in weight. And then I went from losing a bunch from COVID to gaining a bunch and being the heaviest ever weight. I couldn't move. I couldn't get around. And so that's really was the wake-up call for me. And what the doctors had said, because I'd been going in and out of the hospital, was that my organs were failing. And it's most likely related to COVID, but other things as well. And it was in that I started to realize that there was some emotional and mental health issues accumulating because of all that. And so I would say the journey began then, the wake-up call, but it was a long process until I accepted the mental health and the emotional health had to come first. I could never deal with the physical health until I dealt with the emotional health and the mental health first. That needed to be addressed. I'm not talking, when we talked to doctors, we talked medicines, all that stuff, and it ended up that wasn't the route. That just took me down a hole further with more medicines and more treatment. So it was a wake-up call. And after going that route and trying everything and getting worse, and then just coming to the end of myself and realizing that something has to be completely drastic and different.
Gotcha.
And I did. There were some personal things that took place here in the home and in the house, and really heavy things. But in that process, it shifted the way I work, my whole office, my environment, what my priorities are, what I'm going to focus on, and a lot of other things, and priorities. And that's kind of really where it started. And then there's the whole, how did I do it physically? That's a whole nother story. But yeah, mentally, emotionally is how it really started for me. I needed to do something if I was going to stay in the game.
Well, dude, first off, the game of life. Yeah. Listen, thank you so much for being transparent on this. I think this is really important, especially for web designers. Like you said, we're in our chairs a lot, where it's so easy to just do your work and to just kind of let yourself go physically. And I was making light of your situation and joking, but I know it was really serious for you. So I don't want to, I hope you realize I don't discount how serious that was. But sometimes it does take a moment or something like that to really make you like look back and look at where you're at and what you can change and what you can do. You had mentioned it was a lot of mentality and your thoughts. Your head controls your body. And look, sometimes just getting physical and doing things like that can help work upwards and help your mind. But it seems like you were in such a spot where you had to start with your mind first. It looked like you could make all the physical changes to help, but it was, you had to tackle some stuff mentally first. But yeah, you mentioned like your environment. You post on your socials about just cleaning up your house and keeping things tidy and what that does to your mentality. And I'm in a season of life right now where we have little toddlers. So me and my wife have to we're like, okay, we want it to be perfect and tidy, but we have toddlers. So sometimes you just got to go with the flow. But yeah, like what was the start? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. As you're touching on it, and I think this leads into your question, what was the start? And I think for me, what I found, what was happening to me is, so anxiety started to become the issue. That's when I realized that this was a mental, emotional. I started having anxiety breakdowns. So I went from having the sick to being sick to where when I'd start getting stressed out from work, I'd start getting the shakes. And I would start getting faint and I'd have to go lay down, like real anxiety, stress breakdowns. And I was starting to get them frequently. Like at one point, I remember being on a chamber meeting or a city council meeting talking. And then when I got off, I just broke down crying, like bawling. And I couldn't think, I couldn't check my blood sugar. And I just had to go lay down. My wife was like, "Are you okay?" And I started to get them frequently. And every time I'd come into the office, I'd have these. So I realized it was anxiety. So what was it? And I started to realize that every waking moment, because there were so many things life throws at you, you start thinking finances, money is the issue, get the business going. So you start waking up and you work in a home office. You're thinking, I got things to do. Then you're sick and you're behind. So you're constantly thinking about that. So I had to get to a point where I can say, you know what, whatever happens, happens. I'm going to get up slow. I'm going to stretch. I'm going to put on some yoga. Even though I can't get on the floor and do real yoga, I'll sit on the edge of the bed, put on wheelchair yoga, and start there, right? But that wasn't just a physical thing. It was the mental. I'm going to put drapes on my blind so that I can open them in the morning and breathe in the sunshine. I'm going to clip the bushes in front of my window so I can see my neighbors and stuff like that. And little things like that, like my morning routine went from get up, get ready, get coffee, go to work, to get up, stretch, do my morning routine. Now I got a little home gym so I can get in there and stretch, do my morning devotions. Part of my morning routine is going into the living room, opening up the blinds, opening up the curtains, opening up the windows, putting a little thing on the curtains, a tie. Like we never used to do stuff like that. We had a fairly modern home, right? Curtains. Who has curtains anymore? I do now. I have my routine with my dog, just like the different things just in the home that you normally rush through to get to work. That was the key. And I had to get through that process. And it's okay if I get in at 9, not because I'm sleeping until 9. The key is I'm okay getting up at 6, but not getting in till 9. That was the key. And once I got through that, it was easy for me to break away and say, the world's not going to fall apart. The world doesn't need me that bad. It just doesn't. And once you get to that mindset, and the clients end up being okay with it, and everybody's okay with it. Most people are. But it's that people-pleasing process. We all have different things. Some of it's people-pleasing. Some of it's, low self-esteem. Whatever the case it is, it's getting through that anxiety and figuring out what is it that's causing you that anxiety. And then start there. That's what helped me. That's where I started.
It's so great to hear what power is in a morning routine. And even just the idea of starting slow, because I'm sure everyone who heard that is like, yep, that's me either right now or has been in the past or you feel like you're getting to that where there's just so much to do. You wake up, coffee, boom, go. And I fall into that trap, quite a bit, but I've tried to combat that. And sometimes it does depend on life, depending on your situation with family and littles and schedule. But overall, and there are some times where I'm like, I have a busy day today. And quite frankly, I want to go. I'm ready to get going. But it doesn't need to be every day. And I found that to be the issue is when you program yourself to every day, business first, me second. There's a book called Profit First. And I'm sure there's another book out there somewhere that's called you first, or I don't know, something you got to focus on you first. and then make sure you're centered. And maybe that's a 10-minute routine. Maybe it's an hour routine. I don't know. It might be different for everybody, but what a great reminder to like wake up, center yourself, whatever that looks like, spiritually, physically, whatever it is. And then you're so much more fresh. And no client's going to be like, hey, Geno, I saw you weren't active on, base camp till 9 and not 8. What's going on? Like they don't care. Just as long as you get the work done. Yeah. Focus on you first. I love that reminder.
And you added to that. And I think this is so important because it depends on the season of life you're in. When I was in my 20s and 30s, that is the season to hustle and get out there. And sure, you're starting a family, but that's still when physically you're a lot of prime, you're a lot of learning. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, those 20s, 30s. So it is a different season of life. But I think the key is learning that you can shift and don't get stuck in that season of routine. Don't get stuck in that routine because that's temporary. It's like football. When I played football in high school, I ate like a king. I ate spaghetti and carbs all day long, and I was 280, fit, running around. And the problem is, after that season of life in 19, 20, 21, I wasn't doing that, but I was still eating spaghetti and carbs, right? Different season of life. You got to change your routine. And so what happened for me is I was stuck in my entrepreneur Silicon Valley 2030 mentality where, running and gunning, spend a lot of money, grow, do this, do that. And it was hard. I knew I had to break out of it probably about 6 years ago, 5 years, right when things started picking up. I knew it was too much, but I didn't listen to myself. And it just, fortunately, it's never too late for anybody. And just the longer you don't listen to yourself, the harder the road is to get back.
Gosh, I'm just so excited for you, Geno. Honestly, I feel like you're at such a cool season in life, and you're old enough to have experienced the entrepreneurial journey where you're at, but still young enough to make these type of changes, which is really cool too. And like you're able to make pivots with your business and change some things that kind of, I would say, probably align with your new routines and new mentality and stuff. Like I'm just kind of wondering, how has what you've learned physically with weight loss and putting yourself first and just a little more focus on your headspace and your mentality, how has that affected your business? Has it made you slow down? Has it made you do less? Has it made you set boundaries? All of the above? What does that look like?
All of the above. It's great. And it kind of leads into something we touched on I want to talk about, and that's kind of the new direction I'm thinking that I'm the vision I've been receiving to go. But in general, it has, slowing down my routine in the mornings and throughout the day has to flow into my workflow. And that's kind of my thing is I got to live this impossible work-life balance. Like if I'm going to have a goal, I'm going to do the impossible. And this work-life balance is an impossible goal. So that's going to be my goal. And so what I'm doing is, since I get to work from home, is I'm just blending my home life with my work life. I know many books will say not to do this, but I find it really cool that, I can have this call, get up, walk into the living room, feed the fish, make a sandwich, go in the backyard, relax in the sun for a little bit, come get ready for the next call, work for a little bit, head over, do the laundry. This is my work day now.
All those books, Geno, were written before COVID. So like you said earlier, it's like, hey, corporate America, welcome to our world as work from home web designers.
Yeah. And so, and how that has helped me is that's allowed me to give more attention to detail, which has allowed me to get more into the web development work. But I've also, we'll talk about this, is I've handed off a lot of project management. I've handed off a lot of clients actually to other companies, but I'm still doing the work. And one company in particular, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But that's been really neat because at the time I realized, I just want to build, I want to be creative, and this is what I'm good at. And what that leads into is me being, and this kind of leads into where the business is going to be, is Geno, the go-to consultant. If you can get on his list for a build this year, you're good to go. And that's kind of the new direction of Monterey Premier and stuff, because me being in there, just these last few weeks, by me being in there, just building sites and talking to the clients, but not managing the clients or the projects, but working with them and being the lead developer on these projects and being the core developer, has really allowed me to grow and say, hey, this is what I do. Now, eventually there'll be a team and I'll probably focus on that. But my main goal really isn't so much, I know I could do sales, marketing, and branding. And fortunately, I'm in a place where the business comes, but less about the big agency and more about the relationships. And, some of the things I do now with the clients, our clients, whether it's my client or one of my white label partners clients, is these weekly meetings where I'm having, like, after this, I have a call with a client where we're actually going to build 3 pages together, or build some pages together. And I know that people have been doing this, let's train and do this together and stuff like that. But it's more about relationship building with the client than it is, they're not paying me to train them. I'm saying, hey, we're having these weekly milestones. You have a lot of questions and stuff as I'm showing you these things. Let's build one together and ask me those questions. And he's like, yeah, that's what I'd love to do. It's not about me training him as much as it is about building that relationship, taking it slow, getting to know him. And that is totally like opened my eyes to where the vision and the future where I want to be is. And I think
so 2 things I just captured from that. It's like, it looks like what you went through physically and mentally with your health has kind of made you sit back and realize, number one, the work that you enjoy doing, then that fills you up and doesn't burn you out. And then 2, quality over quantity, like deeper relationships rather than just a bunch of work with hustle and scale, which I don't know anyone who does business at massive scale that's, at least in the web design world specifically, that's like, I wake up and I love making template sites that thousands of people can do. Like, that's just what fills me up in the day. No, I don't know anyone who says that. Now, that's different out of like product. I'm not dishing anyone who does product creation or stuff, but like a lot of web designers ask me, should I have like a $500 template option? And I'm like, maybe, but is that what you want to do? Like, do you want to wake up in the morning and be like, I want to sell this template? Maybe for a season, but it seems like, I say that to say, again, in all seriousness, you are at a place where, but on the outside looking in, it looks like you realize you want to focus on the work you love to do and deeper relationships with the people we love working with. Yeah. And that seems like it's working for you.
Yes, very well, very well. And on a couple different fronts. I mean, so like, we've talked about in the past, I do a lot of work for other agencies or even individual freelancers. And as their developer, and I love those relationships because we're working with many clients. We're learning from each other. One in particular I'm doing a lot of work with right now, Jessica Light from JJ Socialite. We've gotten to a point where when I got really busy, as I was going through these transitions, I would refer them to her, letting them know that I'm her developer, and I would still most likely get to work, but I wouldn't be managing the project. Now, obviously, there's a pay cut in that for me, obviously, right? But that's okay because I'm still working on the project, and it's a Divi client that came to me because they have Divi, so I already know they're a good client, they're legit, and I'm gonna work well with them because those are the leads that usually come in, but also, her skill set is at managing projects is better than mine. It's a wonderful, and I'm getting to learn from her. She's learning from me. We're tag teaming projects. That's a relationship. And then together we build this relationship with their team. And it's wonderful. I mean, the phone calls, even though they're weekly and they're work, they can be pretty fun. Lots of laughs, lots of joking around, happy clients. That's what I'm talking about. There's nothing like a stressful phone call,
it's the worst, right? Yeah.
So if all your calls are fun and like this, then that's what I'm talking about. And the way to make that happen is relationships. Forget the sale, build a relationship. That way every call is not going to be an anxious call. It's going to be a call.
Hey, I appreciate that as a podcast host for you. Like when I reached out to you, what I don't want to have happen is for you to be like, oh, Josh wants to interview me on his podcast again. This is going to be stressful, or maybe, like maybe next year. I want you scheduled a call like the next week. I want that for people to be like, oh, I'd love to chat for a little while. That's definitely my goal with this. And I think that's an interesting mindset to have as a web designer too. Like, and for clients, like you want clients who you get a call from them, you're like, ooh, all right, I'm excited to talk with them. Not, oh God, how long is this going to take? But and I realize it's harder to do that early on, but what a goal to look forward to be like, I want to refine my circle of people I work with and stuff to where like it's good clients who fill me up and, make me excited to wake up and do this thing.
Yeah. And that takes meeting them where they're at. That means having to budge a little bit. Like I don't force all my clients into Basecamp, In fact, I'm leaning more to Google Drive because that's where they all like to work. Most of them, if they like anything, or rather just send me emails. But, we have to budge a little bit, but it's all about the relationship. Give and take, make good friends.
Yeah. And so on a practical sense, you mentioned like work life. I've heard it termed as work life integration. And like I said, you mentioned it. The corporate world, welcome to our world, corporate America, or corporate world outside of America too. This is how we do business. We work from home. We have deadlines, but as web designers, we can work when and where we want. However, you have to be your own like boss and say like, hey, don't work from like 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day, because you can quickly do that because there's an endless amount of work you could do on your projects and on your business. So kind of a two-part question. I want to know how your like daily changes and habits like that with work-life integration with your family. Like for me personally, today I woke up at like 8:30, I grabbed my puppies. We went and grabbed Panera for breakfast. I brought it home, ate with my wife and my little girls, and I started at 9:30. And then I stopped at noon. We went for a walk. I had lunch, and then I had a call at 1, and then now we have a call at 2. After this, I'm going to do some emails, and that's it. That's it for the day. Now, some days are busier than others. Some days are lighter than this. This is kind of like an average day for me. I say that to say I have crafted my days and my week intentionally. I still get my work done. It's just in the parameters I've set. So for you, Geno, like, how has that helped you? And then also, how did you learn to craft your week, and what changes did you make? I'm sorry, I just asked you like 8 questions, but yeah, how did this new work-life integration and how you schedule your days and stuff, how did you do it, and how's it helped?
That's a great question, and one that will never get answered in this podcast or in any podcast ever. But let's go there anyways. It's funny because we had this. I was on Divi chat last week, and that was the topic. And it's interesting in that all this. The same. We could talk about this forever. But for me, really, what it came down to is I want to be. This is what I said on Divi chat, and this is kind of my new thing: is find consistency where you can. So we have to be flexible, right? I mean, my days are flexible. So where can I be consistent? So one of the ways, and I'm going to talk about in the workplace. So consistency. So we know about routines at home, right? Wake up, do your coffee. We have routines. But in the workplace, how do I make the workplace work for this new balance that I have, where I want to be able to have the freedom to do my errands and all that stuff and still be disciplined? And that is find consistency where you can, so that certain days. Some people it's blocks of time. I set aside for certain blocks of time. For me, it's I know my Tuesdays and Thursdays is what I try to do is every time I have an active project, a new website build or anything I'm involved in, I try to establish a weekly schedule from the very beginning of the project, and I'm going to get on a call with them, whether we do or not. So we establish a day at a time. So we're going to say Tuesdays at 3:00 for the next 6 months. We're going to be on the phone. And so I try to set those consistencies now with all my clients, whether they require weekly calls or not, because what that does is it keeps me accountable. I got a routine. I don't fall into I'm not going to talk to them until next week, so I don't have to worry about those goals this week. Even though you put it on this week because you won't have time to do it next week. So that's for me personally, who's an undisciplined guy who will wait till the last minute. I had to make my own custom thing, and that was the weekly calls that helped me be accountable. I call her my boss, Jessica. She's my white label partner, and that makes her happy because she knows I wait till the 11th hour on everything that I do. And I just like the challenge. I can't help it. I hate to admit it. I like that proud feeling of pulling something off last minute. But it drives me crazy and stresses me out and everybody else, including my family. So
but you're self-aware. You're self-aware of your vices, right?
Yeah. So create consistencies where you can in those schedules. And then, so that way I know my Wednesdays, I know I'm going to have a block of time to work, but I'm also going to have a lot of freedom. My Fridays are very flexible. So if I have to take a call, schedule something last minute, I know I can on Friday, but also I know I can break away, go see a movie. And Mondays, I don't schedule calls because I want that freedom to be able to take an emergency weekend, have to follow up on something, or just catch up and put out the weekend fires because I'm no longer going to respond to weekend fires. But also the flexibility comes. A couple of weeks ago, I got a call on a Friday night about 5 o'clock. Hey, Geno, any chance you have any availability? We have a friend of a friend. She's in D.C., and they have a big trade show, and their site crashed, and they can use your help, and we can only think of you. It's WordPress. Jumped on, ended up doing like a 48-hour weekend project, rebuilt the entire site in Divi on my hosting over the weekend, launched it at 3 a.m. on Monday, just as they were starting their trade show in Wisconsin. It's a big government project. It's engineless flights, planes and stuff like that like they go use space and stuff like that to fly without fuel. And, I love that freedom of being able to say, hey, I may be 47, but I could still pull a hackathon over the weekend and put together a 7-page site from scratch, and build it and launch it. And it's crazy. So like you said, sometimes you're ready. You got to get that cup of coffee and you're going to put on rock music or ska all weekend long, crank the music up, and you're going to pretend like you're a teenager again. And you're going to suffer for the next 2 weeks because you're 47 years old and you shouldn't have done that. But hey, it's that flexibility. So because I rest on the days when I can, even though I know there's work to do, it allows me to be rested for when those kinds of things come. I love that.
So this is like this type of schedule, this freedom. I'm sure a lot of people who maybe earlier on in the journey, this is inspirational. They want to get to, you and I, let's face it, we're both a little more, we're seasoned in our journeys, and we've learned a lot the hard way, and we've set some parameters up in place. Do you think you could have had that schedule set up in the very beginning? And do you think it could have worked? Or do you feel like you need to go through a certain amount of years of a lot of work and hustle to get to a point where you could have that type of freedom-based schedule?
I would imagine that the hustle has to happen at some point. I can't see how anybody could really do that without that initial hustle. But I'm sure there are people that can share how they've done that journey. But yeah, I think if it wasn't for that experience, I wouldn't be at peace. Like, I might still be striving, I don't know. I feel like I got lucky that I went through that, burnt out at a somewhat fairly early age and came through it. I feel like more experienced. I don't know if I could have had that schedule back then. That's a good question. I don't think I could have.
How long do you think is a reasonable amount of hustling before you should, as a web designer, the industry really well, obviously I know you're not a dabbler, but you like doing different things. So it was a lot of different things, which that as exciting as that is, that's one of the things I often have to reel my students in and be like, okay, you're doing too many things. Do like one thing really good. That'll make life way easier. Then you can add more things to it. But, I have a lot of different thoughts on how long it might require to hustle before you need to, potentially reel it back. What about you? What do you think? Like, what is Geno's proper hustle amount? I'm having a hard time phrasing this, but what's Geno's hustle timeline?
This is a good question. And you know what? I think what's great about you asking the question the way you did is it got me thinking is that it depends on the person. So there are folks who are a lot more disciplined at like business plans, and at an early age, they go into it prepared, and they kind of have advice. They have dads or friends who are in business, and they have advice. Then you have some knucklehead who didn't go to college, who's just winging it and watch a couple good movies and likes likes Steve Jobs and thinks he can do it too, and does whatever he can throw out there and puts on a big show and fakes it till he makes it, because he started at a late age. So it really depends on who you are and what your personality is. I'm not saying that I was one or the other. All I'm saying is that it really depends. So for me, I kind of always had that ambition. And so when I was young in my 20s, I always wanted to have my own business. But I didn't really launch out. And then I tried several times, but it was never enough I always needed a job. I always needed a real income. And when I finally took that risk, at the time, my kids when I took the risk to start my own business, I got out of ministry. Because I went from full-time business to full-time ministry, back into business working for somebody else when I decided, screw going back to business. After that, it's time to start my own. And so at the time, I was willing to do whatever it took. Our kids were young, very young. So within our family dynamics, we're only married a few years, but our kids were just babies. And my wife was like, let's do this. Let's go for it. So I could put in a lot of hours, and I did. To the point when we hit our peak, probably around 2016, 2015, when we did the meetup in Orange County, the first Divi meetup, I would say that's when I had my hands in everything. We had the marketplace. We had a lot of developers working with us, and we were creating products. I had my hands in everything. At that point, I should have slowed down. I think that's where I was ahead of myself. I was put it on the credit card because, you got to spend money to make money, and, you get yourself out in the market, put your name out there. I felt like, remember the show Silicon Valley from HBO? I felt like that one rich investor that's like spending all the money on marketing materials. He's blowing through all the cash on billboards and stuff like that and not putting anything out there. And this kind of felt like where I was at a point there. Everything happened so fast.
Is it fair to say, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Geno. Is it fair to say, though, it may not be an exact amount of time, but as soon as you feel like you're overextending consistently, it's time to make a change. It's time to do something. Yeah.
Yeah. And I noticed it for me personally in the music I started listening to. I noticed like when I would get away on a break or a road trip, I was listening to songs like on Burnout and Breakdown and I Need a Vacation, and listening to songs like UB40, The Elevator, where it talks about working your way up the ladder only to work your way back down the ladder and die. Just noticing it in the music. Jack Johnson, I Hope This Whole Trade Breaks Down, a song about just getting tired of the rat race running around. Listening to that, and I noticed that, and that had been going on pretty much since about that
so you
time.
may not have realized it initially. It was just like the outward things you were doing that were sending you signs, it sounds like.
Yeah, and it was. And at the time, I thought it was just disguised as, well, that's just part of the hustle. That's just part of the race, Yeah, you feel like you're going to break down, but you got to keep pushing.
It's really tricky, isn't it?
Break down. You should have stopped,
It's a tricky line to balance, though, because I agree. If you start a business, you're going to build it yourself. You're going to have to hustle. You got to get your work boots on. Yeah. I recently had Amy Porterfield on the podcast, who has been an entrepreneurial legend for many years and was one of the first like online course creators. And so as a pioneer, I would say in the industry. And she said the same thing. She said, you have to hustle, but her advice, which I echo, and it sounds like you echo as well, is that you have to learn to turn it off, or at least you have to learn to kind of like contain it and do hustle and spurts. And everyone's going to get to a point where either your health is going to suffer mentally, physically, your business is going to suffer because you're not leading at a capacity that is going to be sustainable. Your team is going to suffer if you have a team, because you're going to burn people out and they're going to be like, I'm not going to follow this guy. He's like losing control of himself. I'm going to go right down with him. And then everything, like everything can suffer if you don't kind of reel it in and be aware of the hustle. And I understand the draw. This is interesting because we live in a world where you always want to see the graph go up and to the right as far as your numbers and your revenue. And I'm at a place this year where I'm looking at doing offering some new programs and stuff moving forward. And my business will shift a little bit here in the next evolution. And I'm like intentionally taking my time with that. And I'm essentially okay with making less money this year. So this will be the first year that I'm probably going to make less money than I did last year. Every other year has been up and to the right. But this year, I'm okay with that. There's a lot of personal changes and things like that. But I've learned you have to swallow some pride. And you have to be okay with like, I'm going to put my health, my family, myself first, as long as I'm making enough to keep the lights on and, stay somewhat profitable and I'm not going backwards. I'm okay with that. But it's been a personal challenge for me to like, look at the numbers and say, my mental state is a little more important than just getting a higher revenue number this year just for the sake of my pride. Have you dealt with anything like that? Like literally like revenue wise, do you think some of that caused some of your stress as well with those highs and lows of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, it did. It did. And in fact, before I lose my train of thought on that, the last time you and me were on Divi Chat together, it was the episode on finding your lane. Yeah. And we were talking that. And that actually kind of what led, because back then we talked about that, like stop looking at what everybody else is doing. And you remember I was talking about how like I used to be caught up in what the Divi community and everybody else was doing in there. Well, for finding your lane back then, I wouldn't be here where I am today. Now I found my lane, and now this is like the lane and like what you're talking about right now with where you're going. So as far as, let me see, maybe you can kind of, the question again.
Well, I'm just kind of curious, like, because I personally had to realize in order to make sure I'm staying sane and mentally that like I take care of myself and my family and I'm not stressed out and I have a sustainable, like a sustainable schedule and stuff. I've learned that it's not all about the numbers. And I guess long and short of it is I'm becoming okay with like good months, bad months. And I'm becoming okay with the fact that I might make less money this year. I think next year is going to be way different, but this year I might make a little less. Now that terrifies like the accountants and the CPAs and stuff, because they just want to see up and to the right, scale, grow. So I was just kind of wondering if you went through anything like that during your kind of like mental and physical health journey with this. I mean, gosh, I imagine when you were in the hospital, you probably took a pay cut during those months, right? Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And actually, that was a big part of it. The first time I was in the hospital, and I had a pretty good sized team still at the time. And I realized then afterwards that I wasn't great at developing leadership within the team. And that was on me. And so it was more stressful coming back, cleaning up the mess, than it was not being there when things were happening and going wrong while I was gone. And so that was a huge stressor for me. And that's when I began thinking about, do I want to be accountable for 7 or 8 different people? And that was when I had to make the decision. Well, that's going to be a huge hit financially, because now if we're going back to just me, that's about 1/3 of the income. So there was that decision I made then. And then there was the fact that physically, then after making that decision, I got even more sick. So we talk about finances. Yeah, there's the finances of my business decision to consolidate a little bit and get my ducks back in a row and figure out what's going on. We got COVID, we got crisis, got a team, we got burnout. I had to figure something out, and I can't do it with a large team because I can't be responsible for their families as well, and them being paid if I can't even keep all my ducks in a row. So there was that. But then when I got sick, then we started experiencing, Well, if I don't work, I don't get paid again. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Freelance.
I know that's the tricky thing, right? It's like, I've been talking about taking time, focus on yourself, easy schedule, but you got to pay the bills, you got to make money. So it's such a hard balance sometimes.
So you're either a consultant, you're getting paid really good money, but you're only getting paid when you work. So, or you have an agency and the team is working successfully. So there was two things, and I did, and I'm okay with that. I was okay with the decision that we were going to take some hit on finances. The repercussion of that, I'm still okay I only got paid because of what I'm doing. And it did cause me to rethink a lot of things. And in the process, I started building up my monthly maintenance and hosting stuff. And, since I made some shifts so that I'm not just getting paid. So I do have two sides of the business. There's the stuff I love, and I do love the hosting and maintenance because they are all Divi sites. They are good people that I work with and I talk to. I don't have any penny pinchers on my plans, and I don't market to everybody. And my prices aren't for everybody.
You already weed them out a little bit to get to you. Yeah,
I'm totally weeding them out. And so, those are good. Those are great clients, and I do get work from them too. And I love that because that's a lead that'll come in. Hey, I'm ready to update some new pages and this and that. That's all billable stuff, right? So, so there's those things that I'm using to help kind of balance that out. So the money's not like necessarily what it used to be. Heck, when I had the marketplace, we were doing like 20, 30,000 a month in sales just in the marketplace alone on a regular slow month. Come Black Friday or July, that would be my cash cow for the year, and that's just, and then
but was that sustainable? What,
and was it sustainable? And then what did it do to my health? And what did it do to, it stretched us out? I mean, there was a lot of different factors in all that. And I will. I'll take the pick.
I love that. I love that we're talking about this, Geno, because what you just said right there. At one point, you were running Monterey Premier, doing white label work, hosting and maintenance. You're running an agency with a team. You had a marketplace selling Divi products and child themes and stuff that did. And the other, that's right, the marketplace. So it was other people's products. I completely forgot that I had some layouts on there one. So and you had dipped your toes in courses at one point, I remember, and other training. So on the outside, it looks like you are like Geno is the man doing all the things, growing.
Of commerce, planning a church.
But
meanwhile, the house is on fire. I'm like that meme of the little guy from SpongeBob, right? And everything's on fire, and he's just sitting there with coffee.
I know we're making light of this, but it's really important. Like, things can be so deceiving when technically, your numbers looked awesome, the business was growing, but at what expense? Like my whole mentality in business has shifted to ask that question: at what expense? Like, what are you willing to sacrifice to get that amount of scale or amount of income? Is there a way where we can meet in the middle? Like, can we make a good enough income? I mean, if you can scale and you love it and that's your thing and you want to go wild and you want to hustle, and you're filled up doing that, awesome. It might be seasonal though. Like I definitely experienced the sense of hustle shift when I had a family, and as I've gotten elderly at 35, like I understand there's a different time. You know what I mean? Like there's different seasons for hustle, but what a great point. That just remember, when you got like this, I want to speak to everyone listening or watching this. When you see people who are outwardly like they look so successful, just remember things are not always what they seem. I think that's such an important point.
Absolutely.
And I have met a lot of agency owners in my career and in my time as a web designer and freelancer and agency owner myself. And I knew a ton of people who I was jealous of until I got to hear them talk about their business. And they were like, yeah, sales are great, but like my turnaround is crazy. I have constant churn. I'm like working 90 hours a week. I never see my kids. And, like I'm trying to figure out if I can just sell this thing. Like that is so common in our world.
It is very common. In fact, not even just alone in our world of web design, and being in the Chamber of Commerce and being in ministry has allowed me into the lives of many other individuals in different industries and stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's real. The struggle's real, and everybody has to put on a show. That's marketing. You have to look successful. In fact, my wife would give me a hard time, like, you're always on social media, right? I mean, that's marketing. You have to be marketing and putting yourself out there. So you have to find that fine line of, I like what you said earlier, being able to turn it on and turn it off. It made me think of one of my very first mentors early on when I was in sales and marketing, and they took me to a trade show in Vegas. And it was my first trade show. I was in international sales, and I was a young kid in my early 20s, 21. And she was telling me about the old sales guys, because it was a Vegas trade show. So you have 3 breakfast meetings, 3 lunch meetings, and 3 dinner meetings with different clients, right? So how do you do it, right? How to pace yourself, and she thought, the last guy, he was so good, he could turn it on and turn it off. And I always took that to mean turn it on. That was the most important aspect. Turn it on. Turn on the sales charm. Like, you could be like tired, grumpy, whatever, go from one lunch meeting to the next lunch meeting, but you turn it on. What I learned now is what you said earlier, is the turn it off is the most important part, not to turn it on. Anybody can turn it on with enough practice, but if you're not careful and you don't learn how to turn it off, and that's what happened, is I became a turn on all the time entrepreneur, hustler, 24/7, just like that JP Sears, always hustling, always be hashtag always hustling, right? Yeah, I mean, that's
so true. Interesting that it was even in a sales type of situation, there was such an emphasis on and off, because it is tricky, because you want to, I'm so conflicted by what you said, Geno, as far as you always want to, show up and look good, because yes, I do. I'm having even a hard time explaining how I feel, because I feel so conflicted on this. It is definitely so important to show up and be out there, but at the same time, I never want to do it fake. Which is why sometimes if anyone follows my social media, you may see me just not be on much for a couple weeks. And it's not because I'm crouched in a corner depressed, but I'm just like, I just don't have much. I just don't feel like posting. And I'm actually about to hire Kevin, who's done some ads for me, who's going to take over my social media. I'm going to start doing it in batches. And then he's going to be doing the ongoing social media posting and stuff. That way I'm not literally posting every other day or a few times a week. Like, I'm able to batch it. But I say that because I have always, and more that I've thought about this, I do feel like I don't want to show up fake. Like, if I'm tired and I'm just not feeling it, it comes through. Like, you can tell when somebody, like, I've seen some ads from agency owners and like coaching programs, and I'm like, this dude just looks freaking tired. I don't know if I mean, look, and I'm empathetic to that, because I have toddlers and some nights don't go well, and I'm like, I have to show up for this Q&A. Yeah. I have a call scheduled. I have a podcast scheduled. Doesn't matter how tired I feel, like, I got to do this. But when it comes to like putting on not putting on a front, but like, putting myself out there, I have learned that, like, I do what I need to do, but I'm not going to fake it. I don't know. There's not really a point to that, but just to say, like, I'm a little conflicted by the thought of just putting yourself out there no matter what.
Yeah. And there's, I think that's the importance of also having that, there's that being able to, that's why I think what I've come out of this saying, part of that work-life balance, part of that integration means being genuine in the workplace and outside of the workplace. So yes, we're out there. You have to put yourself out there. And that's why I think it's okay putting yourself out there, the good and the bad, the pros and the cons. I've learned now transparency can always come back and hurt you.
I was just thinking, but my caveat to that would be, like, you may not want to go too far, just in case you're like, hey, everybody, I've been super depressed for 2 weeks and I can't get out of bed. And they're going to be like, I feel so bad for you, but what about the website? Like, we got to get this done on time. So it's probably a mix of that, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and there is. And there's some times where I got off the call with a client and I'll get on the phone with Jessica afterwards and we'll go, yeah, I know. You caught that, huh? Yeah, darn, that one slipped.
But that's a good point. Like how far is, okay, let's focus, let's zone on this. How far is too far with like being transparent about not feeling it? Especially online, because it is worthwhile being a little careful on like how far you go with potentially your feelings and stuff.
Yes. And this is really important because especially if you're establishing relationships with your clients and that's your goal is to become friends and you're really trying every effort to do that, is you can get too comfortable. And you can, if you don't know the boundaries. And so you kind of always got to be aware of the boundaries. There's political boundaries, there's social boundaries. There's all that stuff you got to be aware of. And then there's the transparency of yourself, like we're talking about in this case, burnout, depression, like, dude, I do not want to be on the call with you today and you're driving me crazy. So I'm not going to say that. And there's sometimes where things might slip, where you're a little bit short and you're a little bit snappy because you've been on the call with that client 3 times that week and you're working with that client because they're not a special case, but everybody's unique. Every client's unique. And because I want to work with every client that I choose to work with, I'm making the decision that I'm going to meet them halfway, and whatever that looks like in this client. So it might not be what I enjoy doing the most. I like to work when I'm coding. I like to be figuring things out on my own, not with somebody looking over my shoulder, asking me questions while I'm trying to think. So, in that case, I'm not going to be completely transparent. But at the same time, I will. I'm also not going to fake it, And so he knows. So, Geno, I took away your Zen today, didn't I? I'm like, yeah, you did, but it's cool. We'll get it back. So you can be real, but the key too is the laughing, the smiling, knowing that, hey, we're buds, we can joke around, we're going to get this done. The bottom line is we're going to get it done. We're going to get it done your way. We're going to get it done right. I'm going to please you. You're going to be satisfied. But at the same time, I'm going to push back a little bit. If you're going to kind of poke me a little bit, I'll poke you back.
Those examples are an interesting difference between maybe being a little more transparent and real when you have an existing relationship versus like leads and people who might become your clients. Like if you show up on social media in a really transparent, vulnerable state, and your social media is where you're getting a lot of your leads from or something, that they may be like, I don't know if I trust, this guy or this gal handling my web design presence if they're mentally not in a good spot right now. Whereas if you already know somebody and they know Geno's a rock star, but he's just going through a bit of a tough period like that, I guess to say it seems like it would make sense that once you have a relationship established, you have a little more freedom to be a little more vulnerable, be a little more transparent. That's kind of what I get from where you're at, it seems like.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you do have to be careful. It does take you being at a certain season in life, to be able to do that. I mean, early on when the sooner you can be, and this is where you get to the conflict. Where do you be yourself and where do you not be yourself? And how do you find that balance? I learned very early on in I learned in high school years how to be somebody else really early on. I was one of those kids that went from school to school, elementary to elementary, to junior high, a lot of moving, a lot of town to town. So I went from ghettos to upper class to middle class to lower class and everywhere in between. So I've learned to, kind of listen, adapt, learn, and then shift and respond accordingly depending on what group you're in. And it could be any given group, from a life-threatening situation to completely harmless. And, you take that into the business world, you do the same thing with your clients. And I think the same with social media. When you're first, social media is kind of new now. So obviously there's a lot of things when I was first hustling and getting out there that wasn't out on social media. So I guess it is a different new beast that people who are just starting in the hustle, trying to be transparent, Yeah, you got the social media thing's a whole new beast that you got to navigate around. It can work.
Yeah, but the same thing can apply
you.
like if you're in a chamber of commerce or a networking group where you're meeting a lot of people for the first time, or that's kind of that's your sales funnel. So I guess, yeah, whether it's social media or whether it's whatever channel you're in, like the first impressions are what I would say, like, you know, you don't want to be somebody fake, but you definitely want to put on your best front as you can in those type of situations, just because, yeah, like if you join a networking group, for example, and you take a month off and then you go for a couple more weeks and take another month off, guess what? You're not going to get leads. And whether it's like, you just got to show up and there's power in habit. And I found too, like, it's interesting because I'm not somebody who has struggled with depression or anxiety. I've always felt like I have a mission and I have a drive and I have things that my lows aren't terribly low typically, but I do have times where like, I just don't feel like doing this. I'm not in the mood. I'm not depressed. I'm just not feeling it, but I got bills to pay and I'm going to do it. And I have learned to save those feelings a little bit. Like, it doesn't mean that I'm going to be like, hi, I'm perfect and everything's great, but I might be a less energetic version of myself, but I'm going to like bottle this up. And then after the meeting's over and I've got some time, then I'll sit on that a little bit. So that, I don't know. That's my tip from that is like, you know, you're going to have highs and lows, but just save it a little bit. I know that's easier said than done, but there's also another point I don't want to glance over. And you said, like, you got to work on yourself, like how you really are and what you really feel. Like that leads to an interesting point. Like, it may get to a point where you need to work on yourself, and you might need to work on these two really important words called personal development. And you might need to work on your attitude. You might need to work on your outlook on life. You might need to work on your knowledge. You might need to get over yourself in a lot of ways. You might need to put your focus on other people. And I mean, we talked about caring for yourself, but sometimes I know so many people who are so stuck in their own heads. They are so not self-aware that they are never going to get in a better place in life because they are not aware of how they're coming across to people, why people don't want to hang out with them, why people don't want to talk to them. Because guess what? If people can't stand to be around you, you're going to have a really hard time getting clients because nobody wants to work with somebody who they can't stand to be around. So I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing out thoughts there, but I think it's a good reminder that personal development is really important when it comes to like how you come across to other people. Like, how do you come across to somebody you meet every day? You know, I don't know. It's a great reminder.
It is. And you're right. I mean, the common sense, like, are you going to gravitate towards somebody who's always negative? You know, was that the first person when you walk into a party? That person's totally going to ruin my day. Let me go over there. You know, you're not going to, right? And so, I mean, that's the same relates to in just in the business world and life in general. And you know what? The interesting thing is, not to steer away, but like in pastoral ministries, one of the things I saw early on is that in pastors tend to do the same thing. That's why you see so many crash and burn, is because there's this tendency not to be able to open up. You feel like you got to be the strong, you got to be the rock. And one of the things that I learned is it's so important to be able to have those people, that network, that circle of friends you can be totally open, totally transparent with about everything. And now we kind of get into like faith circles, or it might be like, you know, consultants or coaches or mental health. It might be a counselor or therapist, whatever the case is. But, you know, having that has been crucial to my walk. Talking about everything, talking about the depression, because if I had to open up with that person first before I could open up with you or anybody else in the world. And if I didn't have that person, I would have never. I wouldn't be talking about it right now.
And look,
you know, I take it for granted because I'm in ministry, and that's kind of what we do. Is we talk, we get prayer, and a lot of people, like, having been in ministry, serving in ministry, I fell into that trap of everybody coming to me and praying and being the rock, and the same with my family and everything. It's like, So I know a thing or two about that. Put it on that turning it on and turning it off, not just in sales, but in life. People come to you and their marriage is on the rocks, or they've just lost a loved one, real life, like tragedy. And the first thing you learn is, like, if somebody comes that, hey, I killed somebody, don't look shocked, because they're not going to tell you the rest and come to you for counsel, right? So you have to learn how to put on the face, right? And be there and be a comfort, or whatever the case, or be a smile or bring joy. I think that's all part of being just good people. That's not putting on the face, being a comfort, being an encourager. But being able to have people to be completely transparent with will allow you to be a comfort or an encourager or a winner, a salesman, whatever the case is, as long as you're not completely living behind this, who you got to be, this hat, this role. You got to have transparency with someone. And most of the time it's our spouse. Not everybody has a spouse. And sometimes it can't be the spouse, because maybe sometimes just you need that another guy friend or another girlfriend or another other friend, whatever that is, guy or girl, whatever, that you can talk to about just deep, deep, deep stuff. Mm-hmm. That's where faith comes in for me too. That's a whole nother topic.
Well,
but
and that applies to
important.
business too. Like, of course, all those things on the personal side of things is crucial. And in the business realm, it's actually really interesting. I'm glad you brought this up, because we often think about that type of thing, like in our personal life, no matter what our beliefs are, no matter what your worldview is, you're generally going to have people you confide in and who hopefully you can reach out to and be transparent and expressive with. And then there's people who you're probably never going to, get past layer one as far as your surfacey kind of stuff. The same thing is true in business. That's one reason I love having like a mastermind group I'm a part of now, where we talk about the stuff that I'm not going to talk to my students about. And I'm not going to talk about, to other colleagues. I might be a little more transparent with you, Geno, because I've known you for years, than people who I just met, type of thing. So it's actually really important. I think it's a great reminder to surround yourself with like the different levels of people. And like you mentioned, I mean, my wife, she understands a lot of what I do, and it's awesome. She's a great sounding board sometimes, but there's sometimes where like I might need to talk to like you or Tim Streifler or some of my other, buddies in the industry who have been in this for a long time, or somebody who knows my industry really well, and I can really bounce these challenges and ideas off of. Because there's nothing worse. I know we all know that person who like is checking out at a grocery store and they're hitting the clerk with like all their life issues, and you're like, this person needs to talk with somebody. They need like a therapist. They need to go to church. They need something. They need a small group. They need something to like somebody else to talk to, because they're holding up the freaking line. And I'm sorry, but we got to go. So you know what I mean? Like, so you want to be wary of being that person. And I know I'm trying to keep this business centric too. Like, you don't want to be that person with potential clients. And like, let's see. I was white labeling for a digital marketing agency in Columbus one time, building sites, and they allowed me to sit in on some of their sales calls. And I heard some of those where it was like, why is this dude talking about this stuff on the sale? There's no need for this right now. It's like a sale, it's like everything, you should focus on like the exciting stuff. And I had this thought a little bit ago. I want to reiterate, get out of my head. When we were talking about like complaining and working on yourself and being personal, like personal development, when you are in a sales situation and when you're like talking with potential people, if you complain and you dog other web designers and you just kind of bitch and moan about the industry or social media or whatever it is, the client is going to pick up on all of that. And they're going to be like, I just don't know if I want to work with this person. I mean, there's a time and place to mention some things, but overall, I found it to be so important when you're working with people, especially in that first touch, is to be inspirational and look like, I don't know, maybe that is an interesting segue to like, how do you stay positive? There's a question for you, Geno. How do we stay positive in a changing world that right now we're in a situation where globally there are a lot of questions and uncertainties economically. So how do we stay positive during all this?
That's great. And, I think for those of us who are happen to have the sales hat in them in this industry understand that, get it. That's not new. I think there's a lot of people in our industry that don't have a sales hat, and I think they struggle with it. I think that's a great question to have. And yeah, absolutely. I think every first touch, like it's good to be personable. Like we're very personable, and I'm like this on the calls. But initially, you want to be a motivational speaker. To be honest with you, you want to be. What does a motivational speaker do? They make you feel good. When you leave, you feel inspired. You feel motivated. If you can get your client feeling that way, and so how does I do it? I first, I listen to them. You listen to the client. Okay, tell me why you're here, what you're looking for. Listen, take notes. Make sure to bring up something on every major point they made. Just acknowledge it, however it is. Don't give an answer. Don't give a solution. Acknowledge it, and don't just say, "Okay, you said this, you said that." No. You're going to listen. You're going to talk, and then you're going to hit some of their pain points, not by listening, but just addressing them without saying the pain points, like encouraging them, like I came to the right place. So you get all their pain points out of them, then you know what the answer is. So it's really easy, right? It's really like you have them tell you what their pains are, and then you know exactly how to sell them. So it's really a no-brainer. But that's the key, is you find out what their issues are, and then you address them. You let them know they're in the right place. Like when I got that call on Friday, I didn't know if I'd be able to rebuild the site by Monday. But my whole thing was they were panicking. They were freaking out. I say, hey, listen, I'm on it. I'll be with you all week, and I'll see you through. You guys go rest tonight. This is your job. Your job is to go rest. I'll work on things. I'll do some evaluating, and the first thing in the morning, I'll have some answers for you, let you know what's going to happen. But from here on out, you guys got, you can rest. I know it sounds arrogant or whatever. Deep down inside, I'm like, oh, I'm going to put my foot in my mouth. I know this. But, that was my job. It was to motivate them, encourage them, inspire them, and then to work my butt off all weekend, playing tunes, drinking coffee, drinking soda. And then come Monday, it launches, and they're super happy. And that was the thing they remembered, that I calmed them down. I brought peace. And so in a call, I talked about getting into a situation, identifying the people, identifying what's going to motivate them, what's going to get them excited. Are they tired? Are they frustrated? If they're getting tired of their old web developer, don't join that pity party like you said. No. That's probably them. So don't complain about them. Oh, I hate when people do that. Or, yeah, some people lock you into the contract. Or, oh, some web designers, they just go away because they're young. I used to say those things too. But now you just kind of focus on their issue. Well, one of the things that we could do is this, and this, and this. Instead of focusing on what they did, get their attention away from that. Get them focused on the positive, not the negative. Have them walking away saying, you know what, I don't know about that pricing, but I really like that Geno guy. And then 3 weeks later, then you can dump all your drama on them because they're already sold. They're already bought into you. They like you. They love you. But you got to get them to like you, and you got to just meet them where it takes listening. You can't just salesman your way into it. You really have to listen. I call it personable, relational sales. Real, genuine. We lost track of that in the digital world, that relational sales. When I was younger, my first introduction to sales was relational sales, where I actually had relationships with agents in the different countries that I worked with regularly. Then when that business got bought out, I went to the other kind of sales, telephone sales. I was introduced to that world where it's all a numbers game. And that's a different sales approach. That you just run people over until they buy. I watch people just get a sale on every call because they never let a word in edgewise. And then they call McDonald's and tell them that, hey, I was just there, you messed up my order, I'm coming in, I'm going to get another Big Mac right now, I'll be right there. Boom, go get lunch, come back, get right back in the make stuff up, and just get whatever you wanted. Different kind of sales, but I hate that sales. That's a one-time sale. Relational sales is going to bring the relationship, make it fun. You do got to meet them more. You can't dump on them.
And I love that because
right to dump on them.
To answer the question I posed of like staying positive, I think relationships is what keeps that going. Like like you said, the less salesy you are, the more that you can get to the core of the issue and present the solutions. And would you like to know, Geno, my hidden tip, my gold gem for sales that I used from day one, even when I was not a great web designer, that helped me build a six-figure? Would you like to know, Geno? It is excitement.
I need to know.
Seriously, get the client excited about working with you. That is the most important thing. That will over everything. If they leave that meeting, they're like, well, I'm excited. I have a vision. Like Josh shared some ideas that got me really pumped up. I want to move forward. Everything else is easier. Excitement is the most underrated sales tip tool, whatever you want to call it. And that can definitely be in the relationship into things like you mentioned. So we're on sales. I had to mention it since we're diving into sales now.
And if you carry that over into every weekly call, I mean, to have a client say, this is the one call I look forward to every week. I mean, we literally have one client that said, of course, that's the same client that said, oh, man, I ruined your Zen, didn't I? But we're going to make it up because we scheduled another call today, and we're going to finish his site together, and he loves it. That I would take the time, and I wouldn't normally take that long, that much time, but give and take, right? Because then there's going to be time when I'm going to need a favor because I'm not having a great day. And I need to push that meeting out a week. And he's going to be, you know what, Geno, you've gone out of your way for me. Absolutely. That's a relationship right there where you can be transparent. You can't have
Geno, this has been such a great convo, man. We but I love it. I never pin in a title when I talk to you because I'm like, who knows where we're going to go. But I am really excited to unpack some of your journey, what you've learned with, pivoting and mental health and physically your weight loss and how that's impacted your business. I'm just curious, like where you're at now. You've been an entrepreneur for a while. You've been in sales. You've been in ministry. You've been in a lot of hard industries, and you've worked with a lot of different people, different personality types. You've scaled up, you've scaled back, you've scaled in, you've scaled out. You've done all the things. I feel like you're in a well-rounded life experience in business. What's ahead for you? Like, what are you going to do that you're excited about with where you're at in business?
That's cool. Well, right now, we talked about, working together with other people and learning and growing. And I'm finding myself in that phase again where I am being able to work with people and learn and grow with them. And so I'm excited. I feel like I'm entering into a new phase of new growth. Like, I feel like I had plateaued for a while there in my own personal growth, business and development growth. I feel like born again in the sense that I just watched The Matrix again. And no, just kidding. But I did actually. But I do feel like in the sense that, in the time that I was quote unquote maybe asleep or plateaued or whatever, there's been so many new things that have sprung up around me in the WordPress community and stuff that I'm excited about. What lies ahead for me personally, and then so for me, because I'm excited about that. I have scaled back from Monterey Premier being an agency, and I've actually taken what I've learned over the last couple of years with Quiroz.co and the self-branding and the power that gave to the business and the name and allowed me to launch Monterey Premier. Because if it wasn't for the self-branding of Quiroz.co, I wouldn't be doing Divi websites and probably wouldn't even be wearing this shirt, So there was a lot of power in that. And when I moved to Monterey Premier, because I wanted to get away from Divi, and not put all my eggs in one basket, I wanted to have something that was just totally non-Geno branded. But at the end of the day, I realized I like the best of both, where it's an agency still, it's Monterey Premier, but what I'm going to be doing is instead of going after every client, I'm really going to consolidate who I'm going after, because at one point, I don't want the web design to be necessarily what I do to make a living or an income. I enjoy doing it now, whether it's in overseeing a team at some point or coming on as a consultant for another company or an agency. But I want to scale back and hand select and have a list of the clients lined up for the year of the projects I'm going to work on. So I want to get to a point where I'm booked for the year in advance, a big, nice, solid project with a few here in between, some emergency stuff. So be that high-end, high-ticket that high-end agencies come to for development in the WordPress, Divi world for white label. Maybe have a small team. Maybe it's their team, work with their team or something like that. But be that consultant that comes in and builds their teams. So Monterey Premier is going to take on the Quiroz.co branding. So you're going to see more of my face, more of my name, more of my images, a lot more of myself. We talked about not being fake. I've always had a hard time having other people do my social media. I'm sure most people who know me know what's mine and what's not mine. And I even have to reword some of their posts so that people know it's not me speaking. So I'll intentionally go in there and say, me, Olivia, blah, blah, blah. And edit their stuff before I let them publish it and approve it. And but I'm going back to like you're doing, we're packaging it up. So I'm not posting every day necessarily, but it's going to be my messaging, my blog posts. I've cut back from all the guest blog post authors. I saw one of the things I did was a multi-blog. I had maybe about 60 authors contributing blogs daily, and so I had editors that would go through all that.
Man, no wonder you burned out. You had so many things going on.
I had writers. I think I was the first one to hire Randy after Elegant Themes, and then now he was already a writer doing really well, but he's still doing a lot of writing. But I had a few of the writers writing that we're paying, as well as editors, and then the guest blog. But anyways, what I'm doing now, and I haven't fully done it yet, but I'm shifting, and so that the blog is going to go back to being me. So I'll still do Quiroz.co tutorials for the diehard Divi community as I get back into it. In fact, I got some cool things I've been working on just this week, some cool new stuff that I found you can't do in Divi. But I'm going to focus a lot on the business community. And so the new weekly marketing material is building community. I'm going back to the old phrases out there: build, teach, learn, and love, and build community. And I'm going to go after the business community in general and business owners like my clients, their plumbers, their dentists, their agencies, and really go after coaching them in the digital marketing space. Not just WordPress and websites, but how to grow your business. Be strategic. Do you have an FAQ form? Are you doing this? Did you know you can reduce your inquiries and phone calls if you do this? So how to integrate business with the website. So forget the website building stuff. How to make better SEO decisions and stuff like that. So I want to get into that niche. I'm doing a little bit of SEO, but I don't want to be just that service provider anymore. I'm going to be the guy they go to get guidance on those kinds of things while I have hosting and maintenance going on the side over here, and then I'm constantly keeping myself busy and up to date by having some really nice projects.
I love that direction for you. It seems right. Like it seems like you have so much strategy and wisdom and value that you've learned over the years. It's time to doing website building and stuff is extremely valuable, but if it can be done by somebody else, no one knows what Geno knows in your, how many years of being in the web design world? Well,
gosh. I built my first website
what is that, early late 90s, right? Websites. Yeah, so you've got all this wisdom that should be shared outside of just doing the great web design work you're doing. So that makes a whole lot of sense. I'm excited for you. I have one final question, Geno, and that would be, if you were speaking with somebody who is, and I mentioned this because I did a Q&A earlier today for my students. I do a monthly Q&A for all my web design students. And I asked how business was going through the year. Like if you could rate it 1 to 10, doesn't have to be just money, just overall, how are you feeling? And I had a lot of 5s and 6s. And I asked what were some of the pain points, and multiple people said they're overwhelmed. For one of those people, and they asked you, Geno, I'm inspired by the changes you've made and in your business. I'm feeling overwhelmed. What would just some general advice be? Would there be one little nugget of thing you might just recommend that's really made a big difference for you?
Let me give that one
because it could be 100 different answers, I'm sure, depending on the circumstance. But I just wonder if there's something that might apply to most people that could help if they're feeling overwhelmed.
I would say, if there's anything you feel you miss or are missing, and maybe start there. I don't know necessarily what that looks like for everybody else, but But for me, we all know we're overwhelmed, but we have to stop and think, well, what's missing in my life? What's missing? It's not what's happening. We all know what's happening. That's what's overwhelming you. What's missing? Where's that peace that you once had? Because life's always going to be overwhelming. So what happened?
I love that. What a closing thought. That is. That's the way to end this convo, man. I think that's a wonderful thought to end off on. So thanks, Geno, for your time. I know you got more calls coming up and stuff. So, man, another great chat. I could talk with you all day, man, about life and business and all the things. So I hope everyone listening found a lot of nuggets from this they can apply. And, man, thank you again for being so transparent and for being you, Geno. Hey, friends, it's Josh here. I just wanted to mention a couple quick things before you head out. First off, if you've been enjoying the show, please consider leaving a podcast review. I personally read all the podcast reviews. I love hearing your thoughts and feedback on the show, and it also really helps grow this podcast. You can do that easily if you go to joshhall.co/podcast review, and you can leave a review wherever you listen to the show. And then I also wanted to make sure you know that for all the extras on every one of these podcast episodes, you can go to joshhall.co/podcast. We have a post there for every episode, which includes full transcriptions, timestamps, and all the links and resources that we mentioned. So just go to joshhall.co/podcast for all the extra goodies. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next episode.